Hello and welcome. My name is Lylanthia, and today I'm going to explain a choice I made recently, and that was to build Death and Taxes, a popular legacy deck in the game Magic the Gathering. I've had a couple of friends come up to me and say, "Hey, Lylanthia, this deck doesn't seem to perform very well. It's not tier 1. Why are you building it? You have the cards and the access to build so many better decks." So I went ahead and compiled a list of reasons why I've decided that this was a good choice and a good investment of my money. So, the main thing that caused me to go ahead and build the deck is that Rashad Imports recently dropped from over $100 down to about $20 to $30. This was a big decision maker for me because I already had most of the rest of the deck put together. I already owned Caracas's, just about all the rest of the cards are cheap, and I ended up coming into a playset of Ether Vials through another source. So, when sitting down and looking at this deck, I also had the options to go ahead and start looking at other things like building goblins or building even merfolk once I got the Ether Vials. They're all the mono-colored vial decks in Legacy are very cheap, very affordable, and always competitive. So, sitting down and looking at Death and Taxes, I decided to kind of look at the deck as a whole and see what I really liked about it. One of the main features that attracted me to this deck is that there are a lot of cards that you can bring in to be able to make meta determinations for your local game store or for playing in a Grand Prix. There are some really interesting choices you can make. If you're seeing a lot of decks that would warrant you running something that gives you more green and black protection, Sword of Feast and Famine instead of Sword of Fire and Ice is not a bad call. It may not necessarily be the right one for you, but it's something that could be seen as an okay choice in your meta. Additionally, War and Peace, which can be more aggressive, or even Light and Shadow if you find yourself playing a lot of grindy fair matchups. Being able to pick and choose your 4-drops for the deck if you decide to play any is also kind of a strength that I see here. Being able to run Restoration Angel or Gideon, Ally of Zendikar. They're all great choices, and you can run them as 1-ofs, 2-ofs, 3-ofs, and just really tailor make it to what you're playing against. And the deck has been around forever. It's been a tier 2, sometimes eclipsing into tier 1 deck for I want to say maybe 5 years now, 6 years. And a lot of that has to do with the flexibility and versatility of the deck. You can even switch around a lot of the different 3-drops in the deck, such as Mirror Crusader, Bramaz, and change your removal suite around, run Swords to Plowshares or Path to Exile. And I'm personally someone that really likes being able to customize a deck and make it my own for my meta. White also has some of the most versatile sideboard cards in the game. You end up with things like possibly Circle of Protection Red, Wrath of God, Disenchant, Worship, Eidolon of Rhetoric, Humility, Oblivion Ring, Kataki. There are so many different cards that fit into this deck and can be played in the sideboard that lets it be flexible. And then when a new deck crops up and you say, oh man, that Black-Red Reanimator or that Elves deck are totally tearing up the Grand Prix circuit, then you can say, hey, you know what then? I'm going to go ahead and pack basically whatever answer you want. You can run, the deck supports Rest in Peace. It supports being able to play Relic of Progenitus. You can also run Aethersworn Canonist against the Elves decks to try and have an anti-storm option. And really, the sky is the limit. Rule of Law is another card that really hampers down on the Elves deck, or Eidolon of Rhetoric. And granted, they can remove them, but that's one of the great things about playing 4 Moms. You have a ton of ways to protect yourself. So overall, I felt like it was an okay investment to make. Granted, any of the cards can be reprinted at any time, and I feel like that's both a strength and a weakness of purchasing a deck like this. It's a weakness in that if you decide, hey, I'm going to purchase all these cards, they could drop at any moment. But I also think it's in Wizards' best interest to give us new cards to be able to expand this format and to be able to see this deck really come into its own, because it's one of the few decks that can be added to and can be poised as a cheap barrier to entry to Legacy. So the deck currently lists on Magic Goldfish are showing about $900 a piece for the deck if you wanted to buy the entire thing at once. Of course, Wastelands, Ether Vials, Rashad Imports, they're all pretty expensive cards, but none of them are disgustingly expensive. Getting into Legacy, Death, and Taxes, I forgot Caracas. But getting into Legacy, Death, and Taxes is something that can be even cheaper than building a Tier 1 Modern deck in a lot of cases. Modern Jund, Modern Blue-Black Control, Modern Jeskai Control, all of those decks can easily cost more than building Mono White. And additionally, we're going to keep seeing cards that improve its space in the game. The 3-mana Thalia that was printed recently that allows you to have opponents' non-basic lands and creatures enter the battlefield tapped. That is a card that directly attacks fetch lands as a mana base and basically carves out a world where Legacy could exist in the future without requiring 4-color $3,000 mana bases where you have to play a playset of seas and volcanic islands and bayous and oh my. And so I like to think that I'd live in a world where this deck can keep getting better, and being able to pull it out and dust it off and play it in a tournament is going to be a wise choice a lot of the time. So anyway, that's my thoughts on building Legacy Death and Taxes. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, throw me a thumbs up down below. If you didn't like it, throw me some feedback. I'd be happy to hear what you have to say. And